year ago, Leonard Helfrich left a message for me to call him to discuss details about a donation of a piece of statuary for the library. That certainly caught my attention because I knew Leonard was a former vice president and associated counsel of a Lincoln Corporation affiliate and connoisseur of the arts locally. I later learned he had played a significant role in the production of this statue. On the phone, Leonard explained he had made the contact for Jack Hunter, owner of the statue. He said Jack wanted the statue to be placed permanently in the library where more people would see it. And that time it was gracing his lawn at home. Not very many people saw it. Jack was formerly executive vice president and general counsel of Lincoln National Corporation. Mr. Hunter's deceased wife, Marcia, had the statue cast as a gift for him when he retired from Lincoln. Unfortunately, she passed away before he retired, but lived long enough to be able to give him the statue. They had been married for 41 years. Arrangements were made to meet Jack, his good friend David Martin, who was a former auditor of Lincoln and president of Lincoln United Kingdom, Leonard again, Kurt Witcher, who's the manager of special collections of the Allen County Public Library, and me, Cheryl Fervida, manager of communications and development at the library, to discuss the process of making such a donation. The Allen County Public Library is the repository for a significant portion of the Lincoln collection, acquired by the state of Indiana when the former Lincoln Museum closed and gave its collection to the state. Since Abe Lincoln, as a young man, was the subject of the statue, it seemed very fitting to have it reside at the library where the collection was residing. We all agreed this was a perfect match. This sculpture is called the Circuit Rider, and also known as Abraham Lincoln on the Prairie. The artist is Anna Hyatt Huntington. She was a prolific artist, doing so many bronze sculptures, more so than most any other artist. And she really specialized in bronzes that had animals. And in this one, of course, there is a horse that young man Lincoln is sitting on as he reads a book. Again, perfect for the Allen County Public Library. Miss Huntington was born in 1876 and died in 1973. This original of this statue, whether you call it the Circuit Rider or Abraham Lincoln on the Prairie, the original is in the Shipman Library of Adrian College in Adrian, Michigan. But there are several versions of it, some smaller even than the one we have, which is a little over 5 feet tall. And there's a heroic version that is as large as 14 feet. We have the smaller one, and that's a good thing because there's a perfect space for it in our library. And Miss Huntington was noted for the detail that she put into the animals and to any of her bronzes. Leonard Helfrich, back to him, he helped Jack's wife, Marcia, get this statue cast so that it would be the size it is and have the detail it does. And that was quite a lengthy process, taking more than 6 years for them to do that. So that meant Marcia started way before Jack's retirement plans to get this done. And this was all to be a surprise to him, and it was. But unfortunately, Marcia found out that she was suffering from a terminal illness and would not live to see Jack's retirement. So she gave him the statue early. And she knew from the beginning that he absolutely loved the statue because he had seen a version of it before and really loved it above most other sculptures he'd seen. So she knew this was the perfect gift, and it was. And what accompanies this beautiful statue here at the library is a plaque that is a bit of a description of what This means not only to Jack, but to people Jack is close to and people who were close to Marcia. And here's what the plaque says. Marcia Ann Hunter, 1942 through 2000. Marcia Ann Hunter, in anticipation of her beloved husband Jack's retirement as General Counsel of Lincoln National Corporation, caused this sculpture of Abraham Lincoln on the Prairie by Anna Hyatt Huntington, 1876-1973, to be cast at Modern Art Foundry, Astoria, New York, from the original, sometimes referred to as the Circuit Rider, in the Shipman Library of Adrian College, Adrian, Michigan. Marcia presented Jack with this sculpture during the spring of 2000, knowing that she would not live to attend his retirement. Marcia and Jack were married for 41 years. Their souls have been joined for eternity. And there's a little inscription below that says, "I am the soft star that shines at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry, I am not there. I did not die." And so this gives you an idea of how poignant this whole gift is, but how important it is to the library. Jack himself wanted it in a public place. He took every precaution in moving it from his home, which is what you see in this documentary, onto a truck, down to the library, actually taking it off the truck and putting it into the library, and having it in that public place so many people could see it and enjoy it, which they have been doing here at the Allen County Public Library. So if you have not been here to see it, I really hope that you will take the opportunity to come down and have a look at it, be inspired by it, see what else we have in this library that is of supreme interest, just as this is. The trip is worth it.
Thank you all for coming today. This is a great event. We're here to accept an absolutely phenomenal gift from an extremely generous and devoted donor. This bronze statue here, known as the Circuit Rider, also known as Abraham Lincoln on the Prairie, is being given to the library by a local citizen who singled us out. We're very proud to report that he did that. And I'm not going to say much about this because he has a very interesting story about the statue, and I'm going to let him explain that to you right now. Jack Hunter, would you give us the story?
Thank you, Jeff, and good morning to all of you, and thank you very much for showing up today. It occurred to me that your reward would be a history lesson, and somehow that doesn't seem fair, but it is what it is, and that's what I was asked to do. So I've been given a very short period of time. I'm not used to running on short periods of time, but I've been warned by the commander over here, Ms. Cheryl, that I better stick to it. So without further ado, here comes the history. Fort Wayne attorney Frank Gallucci collected fine art in bronze pieces. And in 1981, Mr. Gallucci purchased a statue of young Abraham Lincoln from the Modern Art Foundry in Astoria, New York. The artist was the late Anna Hyatt Huntington. She was world famous for her animal and equestrian monument sculpture. I must tell you that her sculpture covers such a wide range of things that I'm always surprised when I see the art community identify those things. But among other things, she is reputed to have cast more bronze statues of presidents than any other sculptures. So we have young Abraham Lincoln on horseback. The seller referred to the statute, as Jeff just did, as the circuit rider. That's the name that I like. It's the name that I prefer. It references that period in our history when lawyers and judges on the frontier traveled on horseback from town to town within a judicial circuit, dispensing justice on whatever matters awaited their attention. There is some reason to believe, however, that the artist, Mrs. Huntington, may have preferred the title Abraham Lincoln on the Prairie. Whatever you choose to call it, this piece is the only equestrian statute of Abraham Lincoln. Mr. Gallucci brought the statue back to Fort Wayne and promptly loaned it to the Lincoln National Life Insurance Company, where it was displayed in the executive office area on the 8th floor of the Calhoun Street building. Some of the Lincoln Life people who are here will forgive me for saying I secretly referred to it as the Taj Mahal, but it would be fair to say that those people captured the really fine art in Lincoln. And this, of course, was very much a part of that display. I was attracted to the statue the first time I saw it, and in the mid-1980s, got up enough nerve to suggest to Ian Rowland, Lincoln's chief executive officer, that it would be appropriate to display lawyer Lincoln in the law division in the Clinton Street building. And he agreed. The statue was moved to that location, and it remained there until 1992, when Mr. Gallucci requested the return of the statue so that it could be included in a tour of his family art. I was sorry to see the statue go. I mean, to me, the workplace just didn't seem the same without Mr. Lincoln riding circuit. Of course, my wife, Marcia, knew all about these events. And in 1996, she engaged in what corporate types call long-range planning. And she secretly decided to acquire a cast of the circuit rider as a surprise gift for my retirement, which she correctly assumed would occur in 2002. So there's quite a gap of time in there, and I wish I had more time to tell you about the secret part of it, because I'm convinced now that about half of Fort Wayne knew what was going on, and I was the one guy that didn't know anything about it. And there are interesting human interest stories that are not really history on how I almost discovered it on a couple of occasions, and I'm going to hold those for another time. But I did not know about it. Marcia, then, having desired to engage in this activity, consulted with Lincoln National Attorney Leonard Helfrich on how best to accomplish her goal. Leonard's research disclosed that there were 7 what are called quarter life-size casts. And they're all in libraries, museums, or other public institutions, with the exception of the Gallucci model, which by that time had been sold through a dealer to a private collector who did not wish to be identified. None of the casts were for sale. However, if an owner of an original would loan that original to Marcia for the purpose of permitting her to commission a posthumous cast, then it would be possible for her to accomplish her goal. With Leonard's counsel and negotiating skills, and I say more or less off the record with a reasonable contribution involved, the Shipman Library at Adrian College was persuaded to make the original statute, their original statute, available for that purpose. And the result of their cooperation was the 8th cast of the circuit rider, which Marcia presented to me prior to her death from cancer in 2000. I want to give a special thanks to Leonard for his assistance in helping Marcia achieve her goal in spite of the obstacles that she confronted. Last year, 2013, my friend David Martin suggested that as a part of my estate planning, maybe it would be appropriate to seek out a permanent home for the statue. That was a very thoughtful suggestion. He avoided any reference to mortality tables. Thanks, David. Yeah, I appreciated it. And I asked Leonard to contact the library on my behalf, and that eventually led to a meeting in mid-January of this year in which Leonard and David joined me in visiting with Jeff, Cheryl Faverda, and Kurt Witcher. Why the library? Well, very quickly, there are a number of reasons. Jeff's community leadership, the library's role with respect to the Lincoln collection, the fame of the Genealogy Center, the physical facilities, including security, and the number of people likely to see and enjoy the display. Also, a sense that the artist who portrayed Lincoln reading a book would approve the choice, and the knowledge that Marcia would be influenced by the same things that were influencing me. From my standpoint, that mid-January meeting was a very satisfying experience. I knew when I left the library that day that it was the perfect permanent home for my gift. But I did not know whether the institution would see things the same way. And I add parenthetically, having worked in an institution of note for over 40 years, I don't take things for granted. I can now thank the officers and the board of the library for sharing my view and for their support throughout the process of establishing the display of the circuit rider that you see today. In closing, I would like to recognize with thanks some very special people. I'm not sure they're all here, and I'll just mention them to you. Brian Harshbarger, who cleaned and waxed the statue in my yard in the early years. Sarah McCartney, Brian's daughter, who followed in his footsteps during the past few years. Lisa Sherrick, who is here, designer and manager of Berkmeyer Monument Company, which produced the beautiful plaque memorializing Marcia's commission of the cast. John Nichter, who at the request of the library built the beautiful white oak bases for both the statue and the plaque. I mentioned her before. I want to again, Cheryl Faverda, manager of communications and development, who took the lead on this project for the library. She is a true professional in every aspect of her work, and also one of the nicest people to work with that I have ever encountered. Thank you, Cheryl. And at the top of the list, as he should be, Jeff Kroll, director of the Allen County Public Library. I think I said that I've long had a great respect for Jeff as a community leader. I have now had the privilege of experiencing firsthand the quality of the institution and staff for which he is responsible. It's an exceptional operation, and that is due to the leadership and to the tone at the top. And I wish Jeff continued success in all his endeavors. Thank you very much.
Well, Jack, I want to thank you, of course, and the library thanks you. I'd like to introduce our board president as well, Marty Seifert, and he would like to add a few remarks.
All right, thank you, Jeff. I'm here on behalf of the board to thank Mr. Hunter for this gift. When they first brought this to us in February, I understand Mr. Hunter saying doesn't presume anything, but were we excited to get it? This was, we had a wonderful picture of it in its setting where it was, And the fact that somebody was going to be generous enough to provide that to us, to the library, was something we all agreed very quickly in about 5 seconds to say yes to. And we really appreciate the fact that it's here. I agree. I think it's the perfect setting for Lincoln on horseback, reading a book. This library is a wonderful institution. I've only been on the board 4 or 5 years now, and every day I appreciate more and more how great this library is. And I really appreciate the fact that you appreciate that as well, Mr. Hunter. I appreciate the people who helped bring this, Mr. Martin, Mr. Helfrich. I can only agree with Mr. Hunter that Cheryl and Jeff are great examples of for this library, and I'm very glad they were able to help to bring this to us. And again, I'd like to say thank you to Mr. Hunter, please.
A minor point, but we are going to screen off those electrical outlets because I don't think it looks that great. But this is a perfect spot for it, and once that finishing touch is added, I think it's going to be perfect. And Jack, thanks again so much.
Thank you. Thank you.